Long ago, in a faraway land, there lived a beautiful princess, with lips as red as a rose, hair as dark as a raven's wing, and skin as white as snow. She was so pale and lovely that her mother named her Snow White. Snow White's mother died when Snow was very young. Years passed, and the king soon remarried. The new queen was gloriously beautiful, but wicked and extremely vain. In fact, her greatest concern was that her beauty towered above all others. She used dark magic to make sure it was so. Every day she would go to her magic mirror and ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror would always tell the queen that she was the fairest. The wicked queen did not bother trying to be a mother to Snow White. She was too busy adoring herself and throwing parties with her friends. Poor Snow White was very alone. She stood by the window and gazed at the stars, dreaming of the day someone would love her. Later that night, the wicked queen went to her magic mirror. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" This time the mirror said something the wicked queen did not expect. "Snow White is the fairest of them all." The wicked queen grew wild with jealousy and let out a great scream. Driven by her vanity, the wicked queen called in her royal huntsman. She ordered him to take Snow White into the forest and kill her. He was then to bring back Snow White's heart as proof of her death. The huntsman did as he was told. He took Snow White for a walk to the forest, and once they were out of sight of the castle, he drew his sword. He was ready to kill Snow White, but he could not do it. The huntsman could not hurt the innocent princess. He dropped his sword and fell to his knees. He told Snow White of the wicked queen's orders and begged her to run where the queen would never find her. Snow White fled deep into the forest, running as fast as she could. She did not know where to go or what to do. Only when she stopped for a rest by the brook did tears finally sting her eyes. When she looked up, her gaze fell upon a small cottage on the other side of the brook. She crossed the water, walked right up to the cottage, and knocked at the front door. There was no answer. She didn't want to intrude upon a stranger's home, but she was so very weary that she decided to go in anyway. No one was inside the cottage. However, she did find 7 little plates and 7 little glasses on a small table. In the corner there were 7 little beds lined up in a row. She saw the beds and collapsed onto the mattresses, falling asleep instantly. Now, this cottage just happened to belong to 7 dwarfs, and when they returned home from work, they were shocked to find a girl lying across their 7 beds. They started to bicker among themselves about what to do. Snow White awoke with a start and was frightened to find herself surrounded by the strange little men. The dwarfs told her she had nothing to fear, but that she needed to explain what she was doing in their home. Snow White told them of the huntsman and the wicked queen. The kind dwarfs felt very sorry for Snow White and told her that she could stay with them as long as she wanted. Back at the palace, the wicked queen reveled in Snow White's death. Once again, she asked her looking-glass, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" To her horror, the mirror replied, "Snow White, who lives in the forest with the 7 dwarves, is fairest of all." The wicked queen was furious. It was clear that she was going to have to kill Snow White herself. The next day, the wicked queen disguised herself as an old lady and went to the cottage. She watched as the dwarves set out for work and then approached the front door. "Wishing apples, she cried. "Who will buy these wishing apples?" Snow White heard her call and invited her inside to find out more. The disguised queen gave her the shiniest, most perfect apple. She told Snow White to take a bite and make a wish. Snow White brought the apple to her lips, and no sooner did she take a bite than she fell to the floor. Snow White was poisoned. The wicked queen laughed triumphantly and disappeared. When the 7 dwarfs returned home, they found Snow White lying on the floor. They tried everything to revive her, but nothing worked. They were certain that Snow White was dead. The dwarfs placed their beloved princess in a coffin made of glass and placed it outside their cottage. They gathered flowers and put them around her as they mourned. It just so happened that at that very moment, a handsome young prince was passing by. He saw Snow White and fell instantly in love with her. The prince examined Snow White closer. He did not think she was dead, but under some sort of spell. The dwarfs were heartened by the prince's words and told him of a flower that might cure Snow White. However, the flower could only be found in the middle of a perilous sea. The prince was determined to save Snow White and made his way to the dark water, ready to fight any dangers that may stop him in his quest. The prince swam to the middle of the sea and had spotted the flower ahead of him when a mighty leviathan arose from the depths. The prince fought bravely, using his sword to keep the monster's fangs from killing him. Finally, the prince stabbed the creature right in its heart, and the monster fell back to the depths from which it came. The prince plucked the flower and hurried back to the dwarf's cottage. The dwarfs were overjoyed to see the prince return. The prince touched the flower to Snow White's forehead, and slowly she awoke from her long dream. Their eyes met. The prince smiled, and Snow White felt a swell of love in her heart. It seemed as if all her dreams would come true after all. Snow White, the prince, and the 7 dwarfs went into the cottage to celebrate. All was well.